in black robes, just one or two in very key positions, have seen to it that they've killed it off. When the marriage issues went to the Supreme Court earlier this year, I said on the day that they were argued, Fox News, a lot of other news stations came out and said, "Oh, the defenders of gay marriage, they made bumbling cases in the courts, and it looked like they were very unprepared." And in the back of my mind, I was like, that doesn't matter. The next day, because first day they argued DOMA, and the next day they argued Prop 8, and the next day the next guy comes out, yeah. Oh, even worse than yesterday. Just bungled the argument. The pro-traditional marriage people are going to see the victory here, because that's how clear and concise and everything else in the back of my mind I went, I don't know. Sure enough, when the decisions were handed down in June, what we had was a split decision of sorts. You had Prop 8 that was basically said by the Supreme Court, we're not going to touch this. The people that came to defend it don't have the standing to defend it, meaning they weren't legally empowered by the law to defend the law. Well, why did they need to be legally empowered? Well, they weren't the ones that should have been arguing the case for the Prop 8 case out of California. Well, why not? Because of elections. The people of California, though they were worked into a creamy froth of anger and frustration and a decision to go out and vote on voting day when it came to voting the issue of marriage into law for the second time in just a short number of years. The activism in California has been outrageous. Judges have now twice taken what voters voted for and smacked them down and said, no, you stupid people of California, you don't know what you want. We're here to tell you that we know better, and we smack you down. Not once, but twice. First time on a referendum, the second time on an amendment to the California Constitution. In the process of this, the Supreme Court says you don't have standing to defend the Prop 8 law, even though it was still the law of the land in California. And the reason that they didn't have standing was because it is the responsibility under law for the Attorney General of a state to defend the laws of that state when it goes to the federal courts. And in California, because both sides of the State House, the Assembly, and the Senate, and because the governor and because the Attorney General are all from the same party, they're all progressives. They're all people that believe that they know better than everybody else around them. They're vain enough to actually believe that they deserve to make the decisions for everyone else. They believe that they're that much wiser. That the Attorney General and the governor and the legislature in California said, we're not going to defend this law in court, even under the laws that we're supposed to that are supposed to enforce that we defend this law in court. They said, we're not going to. They abandoned their post. And when you abandon your post and you don't have standing, the Supreme Court says there's nothing that we're obligated to do to listen to this case. See, the Obama administration had done the same thing in the DOMA case, which was ironically argued the same week. Technically, the Attorney General, the Solicitor General, the executive branch are supposed to defend the laws of the federal government in the courts when they are under fire. And there's a lot of attorney generals that have ended up having to argue for laws that they didn't agree with or they didn't like. But this was the first time that we had an attorney general and an executive branch, ironically, of the same political party that is running the show in California, that said, we don't like the marriage laws. We don't like the defense of marriage. We don't like this idea that marriage should be defined the way it's always been defined. In fact, we don't even like people that believe that on a personal level, so we're just not going to defend it in front of the court. And that law was done away with at the Supreme Court level by one tyrant in a black robe. One judge. One judge who said he didn't want to be on the wrong side of history for the final civil rights issue. And friends, I've gone through the stages of grief on this. I've been angry. I've been outraged. I am beginning to accept that the future of marriage in this country is gone. Traditional marriage, it's over. It will take a while, maybe not as long as some people think, but you will see court after court strike down state after state. And in a very short period of time, gay marriage will be the law in America, across America, or whatever other kind of marriage you want to have. You want to marry your puppy, you get to marry your puppy. Who are we as a society to say that it's unfair for us to say you can't marry your puppy? So you marry your puppy. Want to marry the tree in your backyard? Marry the tree in your backyard. You want to marry the fence post? Marry the fence post. Whoever you want to marry, just marry him. The dump truck that's in the middle of the nursery, go for it. Marry whoever and whatever you want to. Because there's no laws that are going to be upheld that are going to see the intrinsic truth and value that was never scientifically disproven. Let me give you the real stunning reality of this. These judges in California and you can read more about it on onenewsnow.com, but 7 million votes later, legal fight ends in California to defend Prop 8. The judges there allowed marriage to be redefined without ever having to admit any science on the issue of homosexuality. See, you've got the pro-redefine marriage sexual activists that are out there that are making their case. They're arguing it nonstop. And they're arguing it from start to finish as we are born with a certain condition. That condition is equal to the race of someone's DNA or being born with a genetic disability or something else. It's a genetic, biological, scientific cause that has created this choice of behaviors that I engage in, and therefore you have to give me the same civil rights as other, circumstances. So if you're gonna tell a black man that he's going to be treated differently under the law because he has black skin, well, we don't do that. That's not allowed. That's called biased prejudice. We don't allow that to be part of any form of law, and so anything inherently born in a person is automatically seen as a civil rights issue. The problem was the activists never had to prove 1 ounce of science on the issue of homosexuality. Kevin, you don't know what you're talking about. Amongst twins in which one of them ends up being gay, 4 times out of 7, one of their sections of their brain is slightly smaller or larger than the other one. Okay, let's assume that the study that developed that piece of evidence, which I admit I didn't probably portray accurately, but that's the rough argument. Let's assume that piece of evidence is accurate, that survey is accurate, that what we have here is an accurate finding of science. It still doesn't prove causality. It doesn't prove origin. It doesn't prove where it comes from. And what we do have in terms of science is a great deal of research at some length that goes to demonstrate that when you sexually molest a young boy by an older man, that the percentages chance of that young boy turning into someone who is then sexually confused and seeks out sexual activity based in a different pathology than someone who is not abused by an older man in his life sexually tends to turn out differently. That we have endless amounts of research for and studies that have been done. That is even a statistic that, unless I'm mistaken, I don't even think homosexual men will dispute. Grown men. Yes, I was at a certain age touched by an older man that then caused me to question who I was and how I felt and everything else. So the sin of sexual molestation begats greater numbers of younger homosexuals that grow up wondering why were they made a certain way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Et cetera. That we have lots of studies that point to that. We don't have one scientific origin that says this is the gene right here, this gene under this microscope. We found it. This is the cause. And so if the origin of homosexuality is environmental, in other words, it's a stimulus that's put into the child through molestation, it's an influence of environment or nurturing that creates certain emotional responses within the child, et cetera, et cetera, that is all environmental and not causal. The cause is from an external source. But no judge ever said, yeah, we scientifically know that homosexuals have been demonstrated to have been born this way genetically, DNA, biologically. And as a result, they have rewritten the scope of all of marriage and all of family in America because of it. And I'm sad to report to you, but I think the marriage movement is dead in America. 888-589-8840. Agree or disagree? This is Kevin McCullough on AFA Today on AFR Talk.